Hi, it's Pastor Andy with our Wednesday discipleship video, and today we're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm referencing Daniel chapter 5, but I'm not staying there. We'll get there in just a moment, but our culture uses many different phrases, some words, many phrases that stem from the Bible, and many people will know some of them if they heard them, but you might not know that they were from the Bible. Many people that use these phrases certainly don't know that they are from the Bible. For instance, in sports, many people talk about a big underdog in some sporting event that is going up against a much more favored team, and they say, well, this is a David versus Goliath type of situation. And if you've grown up in the church or you've been a part of Bible studies or whatever for any length of time, that's a very common story, David versus Goliath. But not everybody would understand what that reference was, at least where it was from. They would just equate it to some sort of thing that announcers say as they're talking about a sporting event. Another one that's related to sports would be, for instance, maybe in a football game where an offensive line opens up a big hole and allows the running back to run through, and they might say, wow, that line parted just like the Red Sea, or like when Moses parted the Red Sea, or something along those lines. So again, that's kind of what I'm talking about when I say that there's these different phrases that are used. There are others that are commonly used, again, both words and phrases. Of a word that is very common is that of a scapegoat, and that word comes directly from Leviticus 16 because one of the goats, there were two, one of the goats was released out into the wilderness. It was allowed to escape, so to speak. The other was sacrificed as a part of the Day of Atonement. Others, like eat, drink, and be merry, come from Ecclesiastes 8:15. Jesus used one in Matthew chapter 20, where he's sharing a parable about workers, laborers going out to the field, and he says, in the 11th hour. And so maybe you've heard somebody say, well, it's getting late, we're at the 11th hour at this point. That comes directly from the lips of Jesus. I mention these because Daniel chapter 5 contains another somewhat common phrase. The phrase is not identical, it's not the exact words, and translations can play into this, so please understand that. But the sentiment of what people say now versus what is recorded in Daniel 5 is exact. It is very precise. In Daniel chapter 5, there is a new king, Belshazzar, who is Nebuchadnezzar's son, and this king is having a party. And during that party, human fingers begin writing something on the wall. And what is being written, the king wants to know what it is. He can't read it. He doesn't understand the words that are written. So he calls for someone his dad had trusted to interpret dreams and things. So he calls for Daniel to come, and Daniel tells him that the end is near. Now, we might say, your days are up or something like that. That's not the quote. The phrase that we use is the handwriting's on the wall. And what does that mean? It means that the end of something is imminent. For King Belshazzar, he might have thought, well, at least I have a few years or whatever. No. Persia attacked that very night, and the king was killed that very night. Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, was killed that very night. His end was near, and Persia had now triumphed over Babylon, and Cyrus was the new king at that point. So when we say that amount of time is numbered, or is drawing very near, or something is imminent, we might say the handwriting's on the wall. And again, that comes directly from Daniel chapter 5. Now, there are many other words and phrases that have similar types of uses in our culture today. Of course, again, the translation can come into this. Let me just share a few more with you generally. I'm not going to go into details, but you can look these up. You'll recognize most of these, certainly. At wit's end. Being at wit's end. It is from Psalm 107, verse 27. By the skin of your teeth. The actual quote is by the skin of my teeth, but we say by the skin of your teeth. That's from Job, chapter 19, verse 20. Many people might be familiar that this comes from the Bible, but nothing new under the sun. That comes from Ecclesiastes 1:9. Jeremiah talks about an Ethiopian changing his skin, which is impossible. He also mentions a leopard and its spots. He says, could an Ethiopian change his skin? Can a leopard change its spots? That comes from Jeremiah 13:23, and we hear a leopard can't change its spots. Jesus again, Matthew 15, verse 14, talks about the blind leading the blind and people falling into a pit. And of course, like a lamb to the slaughter is a reference to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7, talking about our Lord being led to the crucifixion for our behalf. So as you read the Bible and you come across something that might sound a little familiar, maybe slow down, think about it. Is that something that people use in culture? See if maybe there's some phrases or words that you recognize that you didn't really think about being in the Bible. Maybe you've heard them, maybe you've actually used some of them. The ironic thing about all of this is that countless people use these phrases. Some of them know that they come from the Bible. Some even might know where they come from, like Daniel 5 and the handwritings on the wall, or the writings on the wall. But there's a lot of people that don't want to have anything to do with God, that certainly don't want to do anything about the Bible or with the Bible. And yet, in some small way, they're quoting from the Bible when they use phrases like this. And all that means is you might try to run from God, you might try to ignore God, but you really, really can't. God is there. His word is sure. His truth will be known. But you can't escape God, even in the words that you use.